Thank you for tuning in to Growing Tech Fast, the condensed Org3D podcast, which conversations about growing SaaS startups are had with those who have grown them. Today, I am joined by David Arnett, founder of Chuck Sports. David, introduce yourself.
Sure, and thanks for having me. So I'm David Arnett. Chuck is a sports app. It's available on your mobile phone right now. The big idea is it's the social sports app. So we've got sports content like you could find elsewhere, but we've also got social features where you can talk to your friends about sports the same way you do in real life. So we're very excited about that. I'm not only the maker, I'm a user, and I'm so happy to be here today to talk about it.
Good. So, I mean, sports fans, they're everywhere. They're all over Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Why Chuck Sports? Where did the idea come from?
Sure. So the idea actually came up from a co-founder, a longtime friend, I guess now co-founder. He wasn't the co-founder when he gave me the idea, but we were playing poker. One of the nice things that came up in the earliest days of the pandemic, when most things were not nice, is that what had been a quarterly in-person poker game became a weekly digital poker game with a Zoom. And in April of 2020, my friend Dave was just bemused at how much of the poker conversation was around sports when there were no real world sports going on. And the light bulb just went off in his head, like there needs to be a platform for this conversation, and there really isn't one. You asked, about Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and those are all platforms that have some degree of sports engagement, but they're almost always missing one of two elements, if not both. Right? One is exclusivity. There's very little exclusivity of sports as a topic in those places. So if you're looking at like your regular Facebook feed, you'll see pictures of food and of friends' kids, and those are all nice things. Don't get me wrong, but it's not, it's not for a sports audience. And by the same token, when you post about sports, you know that your posts are being seen by some sports fans, but also some people who don't care about sports at all. And then they also don't have exclusivity in terms of who your universe is. So there are places, forums where you can talk about your teams, but you're no longer having a conversation with just your friends. I liken it to, if you go to a game in real life, you're not really going to talk to all 18,000 people in the arena with you. You're going to talk to the 4 people that you went to the game with. That's what you would choose to do. And I believe that, given a choice in a digital world, that's what most people would choose to do too. That's kind of my big thesis here. And so we made Chuck as a platform to do that.
Interesting. So as somebody who follows a lot of sports, I only play one myself, but I'm watch football. I don't necessarily follow it as much as I might follow other sports. So if you're somebody who is really into one sport or lots of sport, can Chuck accommodate both of those?
Absolutely. So, the core of Chuck is a curated feed of whatever you care about. So, you're choosing your teams. You could choose teams in every league. You could choose teams in one league. You can also ratchet that we collect from well over 1,000 publications, but you can ratchet. If there's a team you really care about, you'll want all 6 or 7 news sources we have for them. There are other teams you might want just one to be kind of attuned to it.
Yeah.
So yeah, absolutely.
You mentioned you founded Chuck during the pandemic. What challenges did that bring? Was the timing right, or would you maybe have picked a different time if you'd have had the liberty?
So I think the timing actually turned out great. It was a very good moment to kind of quietly be building something, to have it ready to go as the world got better. I mean, obviously, those first 2 months of the pandemic, there were no live sports at all. And even when it came back, it was pretty stilted and not quite the experience that we're used to it being. So the fact that we were building during what was basically, the worst time in the professional sports world, then, also the broader world, and we're kind of ready to go as things have started getting back to normal. I think that timing worked really well. From a practical perspective, from a team perspective, it's interesting because I came to this, I had already, before I did this, I was running a team of like 20 people based in several different countries and 8 different physical locations. So before the pandemic, my whole day was spent on Zoom. So I was kind of already used to that, and it really hasn't detracted from anything, as we're a small team, that we're not physically in the same place. So my CTO is in Houston, and my lead developer is in South Africa, and it works just fine.
Okay, so it sounds like it's going very well. Is there anything you would do differently?
Oh,
You
there
could
are
do it all
lots of
over.
there are lots of things I would do differently. And I hope that's the answer you always get, and anyone who isn't giving you that answer is lying. So yes, I'll pick 2 that I think, that I hope will resonate with your audience. But there's many more, and I love talking about this stuff. So the first is, we made what was, I think still a terrific decision to outsource the development. We knew we needed something on the order of 25 to 30 developer months. We knew we needed fractional UX and PM and QA resources and like operational discipline to run those things well. And I have small pieces of that background, but there was just no way that we were going to be, fast to market, or in many ways as effective with the resources as we would have been. So I went through a great diligence process. I'm thrilled with the firm we chose. They did a great job. I learned a lot through the process. So that was great. Once we released, we had a continued like support and maintenance budget with them. But, in hindsight, that was very clearly the moment to, lean more heavily into building our own team. I think it's important. It's important for, some of our fundraising goals going forward. The team slide typically is, for an early stage startup, the first slide that people look at. And, that slide until December, as it turned out, we first launched in the App Store in June. In December, that slide was still just me and Dave, who, are both, I think engaging guys to talk to and have some good things in our track record, but neither of us has written a line of code for this thing. And that's going to make an investor skittish. So bringing on a team earlier, I think would have made a lot of sense. And then we were in that period before we launched, we were pretty intentionally in stealth mode. And that I had received that advice a little bit up front, because there's nothing inherently proprietary in the idea. So that was our way of protecting the idea. And I didn't just come to that myself. It was a conversation I had with a couple of people who've been through this, but I have since become extremely convinced that was not the right approach. I think
Interesting.
more input earlier would have been far more beneficial than any risk of, competitors rising right away.
So you'd say that actually coming out of a stealth mode, or maybe not going into it as strongly, would have benefited you at this point?
I think extremely so, yes.
And what do you think that's from seeking the external advice? Because it can't be a unique idea to think of. I mean, I don't know of anything like Chuck Sports, but equally, there's so many sports fans out there. I'm surprised no one would have tried something, if not there's something similar out there. So I can understand the want to keep the idea behind closed doors until you're ready to release. But what is there some advice you've received since, which, had you had it earlier, you'd have been more beneficial? Like, what makes you say, I wish we hadn't?
Yeah, so I'll go click one level deeper in there, which is one of my favorite things about this experience, and it's something I've done as recently as today, and I try to do it as often as I can, is have conversations with other founders. And I think those are both founders who are, kind of in my stage of founding right now, which is an amazing conversation because you're going through a lot of the same
Yeah.
ups and downs. And I'm part of a startup community here in New York called Startup Leadership Program. Highly recommend. If anyone's in a city where they do that, and it is a global thing. So those conversations are great. And then people who've been through it, good or bad, and it's good to learn from both, are also great. Those people tend to know more, right? Because they've had more experience. I'd say the one qualifier in those conversations is they also have the benefit of hindsight. So they're telling you, how they would approach things today, but it's based on a bit on what happened. So you just have to color that. It's certainly valuable. But I love having both kinds of conversations. My point in answering your question is that I would have been able to have much more productive versions of that conversation had I been, open with the idea from very early stages and not insisted on people signing an NDA to talk to me. Like that goes on the regrets list.
Okay, leads me on nicely to what has been your favorite moment or like achievement so far?
My single favorite moment was seeing the thing in the App Store for the first time.
Yeah.
This was a massive project, like I said, 25, 30 developer months, ton of moving parts. We changed vendors and one of our data vendors along the way. Huge amounts of complexity, huge amounts of risk. And obviously raising money isn't trivial either, so we were able to do that. So to have the thing hit the App Store and Google Play, basically on time, basically on budget, that felt amazing.
Yeah, and on time and on budget is pretty impressive. There aren't many who can say that happened. Yeah. So if we move into a bit more about Chuck and how people can use it, I touched on it earlier. It cannot be a unique idea. So what makes Chuck special, and why is Chuck going to make it over the other like sports social apps?
Yep. So I'll answer that in two ways. So first, I want to say the sports market is huge. The social market is huge. The sports social market is huge. Chuck's success does not necessarily look like any of the other solutions going away, right? It might be we take 10% from here and 5% from there and 10% from there. It starts to add up to a really nice number. What makes Chuck special is, it's really the first social sports experience that deconstructs the problem. We didn't lead with sports content and try to layer some social stuff around it. And we didn't lead with a social app and start to dump some sports content into it. We led with, we're sports fans, what would we want? Right.
Yeah.
And then, conducted some user interviews. And I wish we'd been more open with the idea because we could have conducted more user interviews. But we're learning from our user base now about what that would be. So, that ranges from like what sports people actually like to what do they do at the game? Do they go talk to their friends, or do they talk to the other people in the arena? Where do they consume from now? All of those things, and we baked all of that into the product model. So I think the approach to solving a problem is what's really different and has led us to some nice novel features that I know I enjoy as a sports fan, and I am optimistic that many others will too.
Yeah. So what do your current user base say about the app? What's been your most recent batch of feedback?
Yeah, so it's funny because like literally today, it is running slower than it should. So if you go build a feed right now and load it, it loads in units of seconds rather than milliseconds. So that is what my brand new engineering team is working on right now. So the answer today would be, it's great, but it's slower than it should be. And I super agree with that. They enjoy the content. It is a great digest, especially, yes, you can use it if you follow one team, and it's good for that. And it's also really good for if you are a person. It's funny because I think about I think about hardcore fans and I think about casual fans. And for hardcore fans, it's a life hack in that it brings and I'm talking purely from the content part of the app. It brings all of your stuff in one place. It's the fastest place to check to check live scores and news, all of those things. It's just faster than anything that exists right now. Once we get the feed to load faster. But it's also a life hack for kind of the outer edge of the casual fan. I was just having this conversation with someone earlier today, where if you are a person who is like mildly interested in sports, but find yourself in conversations that revolve around sports more than you're comfortable with. Let's say you've recently started dating someone and they're a fan of a team. Like, it's a life hack for that too. And that, it can really pretty quickly make you more conversant than you would otherwise be, very, very quickly. So,
I mean, if people listening haven't already at least looked at it on the App Store, if not downloaded, I know that we're on a listening platform here, but walk us through the app. What does the app look like? What can you engage with on there? Are there different sections, liking, commenting? Walk me through that process.
Yeah, sure. So I'll do my best to do an audio tour. So the things we need when you get the app, we need you to tell us the teams that you're interested in, and optionally we can search your contacts to see if you have friends already in the app, and if so, right, you can create those friendships. If not, you can always go pursue that on your own as well. And as soon as you've done that, we'll build you a feed, and that feed will contain scores of your favorite teams. You'll have a custom scoreboard on top that you can add to and subtract from. So, if you're recording a game and don't want it to be at the top of your feed because you're going to go watch it later, you could just unpin it and it comes out of your scoreboard. If there's a game that's not involving one of your favorite teams, but you're super interested in, you can pin that and it gets added to your scoreboard. And you can see, your rival teams' play-by-play updates as you're competing with them for a playoff spot, that sort of thing. And then you have articles about all of your favorite teams collected, like I said, from a whole bunch of different sources. We have, so I would call that entire thing our curated content. And you'll see social posts from friends as well, right? Yeah. And it's curated, right? Because it's your friends. There is a gamification component that we are actually mid brainstorm on what to do next with it. But we ask a daily trivia question. It's an approachable question. You learn something no matter what. It's fun to play, and there are standings based on how you do in that. It's just a fun way to compete with your friends. And again, it's something we will be augmenting in the coming months. And then there's chat functionality, so you can, the text message thread that you have with your friends around sports right now, it's during a game or about a team or anything, can now live in this app where all of the context you're talking about resides. So all of those articles, the live scores appearing at the top of the screen, and we have very ambitious plans for that conversation as well. Bringing live updates directly into the conversation, and some insights about the game. One of the ideas I really love, it'll take a while to implement it, but if you and your friends are all Yankees fans, let's say, and there's a commercial 10 innings in the Yankee game, like, we can pump a Yankee trivia question into your conversation, which is kind of what you would do at a sports bar if you were watching the game.
Yeah, I like that. So I assume you'll also get notifications on your, can you get live notifications to a game on your phone, so that if you weren't able to watch it, but you wanted to keep updated, it would ping you with updates about the game?
Yeah, so to start with, so we have push notifications for the start of every game. We were intentional about not doing push notifications for any other part of the game yet, to be respectful, actually, in two ways. One is of people recording the game, but two, even people watching live, that experience doesn't mean what it meant even 5 years ago. There are people who watch on feeds that are anywhere from 30 to 90 seconds delayed. And so we want to be a little bit careful. I actually told our sports data vendor I said, this is a great problem to have, but we actually had to come up with a way to slow down your feed so that what we
Oh,
are
I
presenting
see.
is behind, 95% of TVs is kind of my gold standard there. So,
Mm.
I know we're not going to hit every case, and at some level, we've got to lean on people to do what's right for them. But yeah, the data was coming in faster in some cases than my TV, and I've got a pretty good connection.
Wow, that's clever. I hadn't actually thought of that it would be faster than the TVs. What I was thinking was, from somebody who is UK based but follows some American games. Like, no, I don't stay up for them all. But sometimes when you are, it's really difficult to watch them over here. But being able to be live updated with games where you're maybe not in the same country as them, I don't know if maybe that's a plan could happen in the future. You could turn on like, I will never watch this in this state, so please send me notifications.
Yeah, no, I think we're going to add a lot of options to our notification
Yeah,
center. And again, to me, that is all about respecting our users, which is just
yeah.
critical. And different people are for sure going to want different things in different
Mm.
circumstances, and we just have to listen to them and
Yeah,
do what they
you'll have
ask
to
us for.
you'll have to create like the most ultimate customizable notification center,
Yeah.
probably more advanced than most apps at the moment. Okay, so if somebody hasn't downloaded it, maybe they are engaged with a competitor app. Is there anything else that you would add that you think, yeah, this is why you should download Chuck?
So it really will be faster than anything. That's the first reason. So, from a pure content perspective, because right now, I would say that the content is the strongest part of the app, and the social and the gamification are catching
Mm,
up, and that's our big picture focus for this year. They add value, but they're catching up from a kind of maturity level.
mm,
But from a pure content feed, this is the best feed I've seen, and I would encourage you to check it out. You just won't see things as fast from as diverse and configurable range of sources, with a custom scoreboard on top of it,
mm,
with some novel things we figured out around presenting information about multiple games at the same time. So even if it's just for the content, I would recommend trying it out. I think you're going to be pleased. I think if you are a person who likes talking about sports with your friends, and
mm.
the vast majority of sports fans do, based on our own intuition and the research that we've done, we offer a solution to that nobody else does. So that would be thing number
It's a
two.
pretty big sell.
Yeah.
So we're moving out of the pandemic. We've touched on it a little bit, but fans are back in the stadiums, live sports are happening. What is in store for Chuck in the next 6-12 months?
Yeah. So a really cool application for fans back in the stadium specifically, I'll probably take more than 6 or 12 months to do, is there are things like on Foursquare where you can find out if somebody's near you, right, or in the same building. We want 5 different people in New York are at, so I'm based in New York, so I keep using it as an example, or at a Yankee game. Like, that'd be a cool thing to know. It'd be a way to
Yeah.
check into the stadium on Chuck. Chuck into the stadium, maybe. We'll play around with the branding of that. It would be a great way to meet up with the people that you do know at the stadium, right? That's the whole thing it's about. And then I think there are also lots of opportunities with the buildings actually to know that Chuck users are in the building. I think there are some fun things we can do there. To
Yeah.
back up to your question about what the next 6 to 12 months look like for Chuck. So we've raised a friends and family round, and we've added to it with a bridge round. That's a big part of how we've been able to build out our team, and we are nicely funded for the foreseeable future. The big goal is, the end goal is to secure the seed funding that really funds the next round of the team and funds user acquisition at scale.
Mm.
So backing up from there, what's going to convince investors of that value. I think the idea I think is pretty universally loved, right? It's more about the team and the execution, and how I can sell that. And I think the more momentum we're able to show in these coming months, we don't need 100,000 users to do that by any stretch of the imagination. What we do need to start showing is 5 to 10% week over week growth for a sustained period of time. And by the way, when I say growth, I mean engagement growth. So I mean, effectively the time that people are spending in this app, living in this thing, whether they're consuming content or socializing with each other. Start to migrate some of these posts from Facebook and some of these conversations from text message threads and some of the feed consumption from ESPN and Bleacher Report. You start to build a critical mass that'll convince investors that of what I wholeheartedly believe, that Chuck can and will eventually be a household name.
Good. Okay. So there's some really exciting things in there. And I think obviously some of them go past that 12-month stage. And so does this question, the parameters of this question. But what are you most excited by?
I'm thrilled to be working on something I truly love. I had a 20-year career before I did this, and it was great. I learned a ton. I worked with amazing people, but my entire career was in B2B market research. I was effectively helping Fortune 500 advertisers learn what other Fortune 500 advertisers were doing. Again, I was good at it. It was fun. It never, it's not the first thing I might go choose to do if I were just sitting there in a vacuum. It's a world I ended up with and made some great things out of. This is what I would choose to do. I like to, in my leisure time, consume sports and talk to my friends and family about it. And so the fact that this is a platform that does that feels amazing. And I see it also as an opportunity to really improve lives throughout the world, and improve and persist connections that naturally exist, but in an increasingly digital age are harder to persist. Like this is glue in many ways in society, and it feels great to be a part of that.
Chuck is on its own, like outside of this conversation, it's a brilliant product. It's a fantastic idea. What I've really liked today is hearing like your passion, like sports fans. We're all really, really passionate people. Some people too passionate. But I think what's brilliant about this conversation today is hearing that from you, and how much this is, like you said, gets you out of bed every day. It's something you're excited to be working on. The next 6, 12, 24, 36 months are looking really exciting from a product perspective, but also from a growth for Chuck and for the mission that you're on. What's in store for somebody who joins Chuck? So you're going to be looking for coming up to seed funding. You're going to be wanting to add to the team, particularly with people based in the US, if you're going for that seed funding. So what's in store for somebody who joins the team? What's the team like there? What can they expect? What's exciting about working on this product?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that. So I'm literally just working on formalizing our mission, vision, and values right now. It was a recent class in my startup group. And we're just at the right stage of maturity, I think, with our team having recently expanded from 2 to 5 to be writing that down. I just brought 3 people in, so in some ways we've been effective in that, but haven't quite codified it yet. So I at the core of it is sort of the end of the answer to the last question, which is you will be helping people enjoy their happy place. Right, people work hard all day, and they have, I guess some of them don't have commutes anymore, but lots of them do, and have to deal with day-to-day life and bills and other things. This is an escape from all of that. It is fun. It is your time in your happy place. It is we want this to be the digital equivalent of putting your cares away and going to a sports bar with your friends. So that's what we want the user experience to be. And I think we would do very well for our internal culture to map to that experience. I think it's certainly how I feel personally. So I'll be good at driving that mission, but also, it puts us in the headspace of our users, and you're always gonna be most effective from a product perspective if you're talking to users and thinking like a user. I think that's something unique we can offer.
I think for anyone joining Chuck, one of the things that's quite cool is, of course, working at a tech startup, you're always going to be working on something really cool and interesting. But like you said, this is something that a lot of people do in their spare time. They go to the bar, they go to watch a game themselves, they all get around to a mate's house and put the football on the big TV and socialize in that aspect. But to be able to work on something that you can then bring to those conversations, and that's especially for people who are really big sports fans, it'd be amazing to then work on that and talk about it. I mean, I talk about my work all the time, but if I was working on something like Chuck, I think some of my friends would be a lot happier. So I think that's what I've taken from this, that if somebody was to join Chuck, that they'd genuinely get to work on something that is growing, but that you could also take that one step further, and that part of your life that you enjoy outside of work, you got to be doing it all day. What is not to love about that?
Yeah, and I'll add one point at the end. I think that's all exactly right. And because this doesn't really exist, and because it is a pretty compelling notion, like, we've got to execute, obviously, right? If we don't execute, this isn't going anywhere. But if we can execute this, the sky's the limit. I mean, this really could be to sports what LinkedIn is to business, right? That's a pretty good pie in the sky picture, and being part of that at any stage, and especially the earliest stage, there aren't many things more exciting professionally than that.
No, I mean, that's a pretty good mission statement.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. Well, listen, I've really enjoyed this conversation. I think it's been great. I mean, if apart from downloading Chuck, if with one final concluding thoughts, what should somebody in our audience take from this podcast?
So I'll give you two answers depending on the audience flavor, right?
Yes.
If you're somebody who's thinking about doing something on your own, I would say that the two biggest things: be as transparent as possible, or as you're comfortable being, but bias towards transparency, and in any scenario, bias hugely towards having as many conversations with as diverse a range of people as you possibly can, whether that's fellow founders, whether that's users, whether that's anyone. I have not had one conversation in the course of building this thing from which I have not had great notes that drove me in a direction, whether it was a podcast to listen to or someone else to meet, or an idea for the app. Could be anything. Have those conversations. And then for the many of you who are engineers looking for your next thing, be aspirational. You heard me talk about what my market research career was like, and what my time on Chuck has been like. Strive for that. I understand not everyone can shoot for the sky every day, but recognize your moments to do it, and really lean into that. Hold out for what's right for you.
Brilliant. Thanks, David.